Hi and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to welcome you to the undergraduate webinar series that we're hosting. This is an interactive online platform that aims to connect high school students with the Ashoka community. This series has been designed to cover different topics relating to Ashoka's undergraduate program, where we have our counselors sort of engage with students and try to guide you through different aspects of the university. Thank you for joining us today for today's session, which is about the admissions process, the application form, and personal essays. My name is Janvi. I was a part of the founding undergraduate batch where I studied psychology and have been working with the admissions department since I graduated in 2018. I have with me Ms. Morsha Prince, the Deputy Director of Admissions at Ashoka. She will be joining us for this webinar. Hi, Morsha. I don't want to take up too much time, and let's just get started. Please feel free to post any questions that you have in the Q&A box at the bottom. We'll take them at the end of the session. Over to you, Morsha.
Thank you, Janvi. Hello, everybody. I hope you're keeping well, keeping safe during this very difficult time in all our lives. But I suppose for students, some of you may be very relieved that you don't have exams. Some of you may not be relieved that you don't have exams. Maybe you were waiting for the exams. So I suppose this is a very confusing time. So I just hope that spaces like Ashoka can offer you the opportunity to apply for your undergraduate degree, which aren't totally based on your performance only in school. So what we're going to do today is we're going to just run through, because this is round 4 of our admission cycle, which is the last round. And so we have a few weeks more left for you to be able to engage with our application process and our admissions process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the admissions process, and then I'm going to walk you through the application form a little bit in detail. And then from there, we're going to talk a little bit about the personal essays that are there on the application form. So if you're looking forward to applying in this round, this session is going to be important for you, and I hope you can make some notes and you can sort of interact. Also, we'll take questions at the end. So if you have any questions, you can write them down and or put them, I think, on the Q&A box, and we'll address as many as we can. So to begin, let me just share my screen with you and start from there. Okay, you can see my screen. So the admissions process, the application form, and personal essays. If I had to move very quickly, so the admissions process, as you can see, is comprises of 3 stages. So currently you're in stage 1, right? You're about to apply. So stage 1 is the application form and the assessments. So let me just tell you what to look forward to, and I'll go in detail about the application form. But in a nutshell, the application form at Ashoka University looks at your academic scores. So there's a place to sort of gauge your academic rigor, along with, SAT, ACT scores, standardized tests, if you have any. If you don't have, that's okay. We have an alternative for that. We look at getting to know you as people. So your personal essays are important. Your recommendation is important, even though the recommendation is not mandatory. We also have a section in the form that is devoted to your non-academic engagement. So that is also something that's very important for us. And I'll go into detail soon. Once you submit your application form, as part of your application process, you are required to write assessments. So there's an Ashoka aptitude assessment, and there's an on-the-spot essay. There's a date that's set for that. And then the admissions office and team reviews each application in depth, okay? And so we're looking at your essays, we're looking at your, your engagement in academics, non-academics, and we look at your assessments that you've done. And then there is a short list for the interview round. So the candidates or students who are shortlisted for the interview round, they meet with a panel for an interview, and it's a mandatory interview. It'll be for shortlisted students just to evaluate their suitability for academia at Ashoka, right? And vice versa, and maybe to see if Ashoka is a good fit for you as well. Post that, we have a stage where we send out our decisions. So you can get a confirmed offer without having to wait for school scores. So many students get a confirmed offer based on their application, their assessments, and their interview. And there are other kinds of decisions as well. Like, for example, you may get a conditional offer or a wait list. And I'll explain some of these in detail as we go along. Or your decision may be deferred, right? Because maybe we need to wait to see how you have performed in school in your class 12. So overall, in the larger admissions process at Ashoka, it's one admission cycle. We've had 4 rounds, and we are now on the 4th round. We've already processed 3 rounds. And so this is the most crucial time, I suppose, for all of you who have not yet applied to us. And just for you to know, this comprises of our holistic admissions process, okay? So admissions is merit-based, whereas once you get an offer of admission, if you get an offer of admission, you can apply for financial aid, and that is need-based. So if you get an offer of admission at Ashoka, but you feel that you are not, or your family says that they are not able to provide for your entire tuition or fees, you can apply for aid. And then there's an entirely different office that evaluates financial aid, and then you are given that decision as well, so that you can decide whether you want to join Ashoka or not. So this is the larger admissions process. So moving forward, the admission cycle, as you can see, which I just talked about, we've had 3 rounds. So we're done with rounds 1, 2, and 3. And as we speak, in fact, decisions for round 3 are in process. And so we've completed 3 rounds, and we're in our 4th round. The date for round 4 submission, like I mentioned, is 23rd June. So it's coming up very quickly. The date for assessments that you need to remember is 4th July. So the 2 dates that you need to remember are 23rd June and 4th July. And this is our final round. So really encourage you that if you want to, and if you plan to and are interested to apply, that you really get started on the process as soon as possible. So moving on. So what does the application form comprise of, right? What are the components of our application form? Unlike many other universities, our application form, because we do holistic admissions, does look for a number of different things, right? I mean, of course, we have the standard personal family details because we want to get to know you. So we ask for the basic details about you, about your family, just to try and understand, who you are, where you're coming from. And then there's a section on academics. So we ask for school scores from class 10 to 12, right? Some of you may have your final class 12 scores already from your board or from the board that you are a part of. While many of you may not have them as yet, and as we know that recently there have been a lot of waiting time for your scores. What you may have is a predicted grade or a predicted score from your school, only because as of now, your educational board has not yet released a final grade, right? So that would be important for your class 12. And that may be based on whatever your school, what they are following. Or we also have what we call a self-predicted a space for self-prediction. So if you know that, I expect this much for English or this much for math, this much for specific subjects that you've taken, then we'd expect you to put that there. If you have standardized tests like SAT or ACT, that could help as well. There's an entire section for your non-academic engagement. Because we do holistic admissions, we're looking to sort of get to know you over and above your academics, right? We want to see what else you're interested in. What do you do in your time away from studying and away from school? What are you engaging your time in? So there are, you can fill up to 5, but 3 are mandatory. There's an additional question on the books that you read. It's a non-mandatory question, but it's important. We'd like to know what you're reading, what sort of content are you consuming, and how are you engaging with that. The 3 personal essays, which I'll talk about more in detail as we go along. 3 essays, 3 very unique essays with very unique sort of focus and word limit. And so we will discuss that, but that's going to be a very crucial part of the application form. We have a letter of recommendation. which is again non-mandatory, but it's very important for us as we read your application forms. Because we read every application form, it's good for us to know, more about you from another person's perspective. So it could be teacher, it could be someone you've done an internship with, it could be somebody you've worked closely with or worked on a project with. It can't be somebody that you are related to or who's a friend or a family member. Okay, so we'd like to know someone who has either taught you or you have worked under, and something a bit more formal in that sense where we can really gauge an external perspective on you. But we do understand that some of you may not be able to get a letter of recommendation, so we won't hold that against you. But it would be very helpful for us if you did have one. And finally, there are sections there's a survey and then there's a support section, right? The two things I want to highlight really is that in the survey section, there's a section called indicative majors. We ask you, what sort of majors are you thinking of pursuing at Ashoka, should you get admission? We don't hold you to that. As you probably know, you can take the first year and a half, 3 semesters to choose and decide what major you want to pursue before you declare it. But this is to give us an idea of what your interests are and what you are starting out with. The support section has something on health issues, whether it's physical health or a learning disability or mental health or language support that you may need. It's an important part of the application form. And if you have any of those, we hope you can put that down, maybe add some attachments to help us sort of understand your application in its entirety. There are places where attachments are required, and there are places where attachments can be put but are not mandatory, right? So where the attachment is mandatory, we hope you can put your attachment, but where it's not mandatory, if you have something relevant, we'd expect you to put it up. Otherwise, you can skip it if you don't have anything relevant to put there. Okay, so that's the application form. I want to give you a few guidelines. As you have a few weeks now, we've said that, the second point is to give yourself enough time, right? 2 to 3 weeks. That's pretty much what you have now between now and when the deadline is to submit. Because it does take 2 to 3 weeks to fill in your application form in a way that is detailed, in a way that is thorough, in a way where hopefully you will be confident of the form that you're submitting. So please use only a personal email address, especially for those of you who have school email addresses or are in a boarding institution. At some point, your school email address may not be valid anymore or may be deactivated. So please use a personal email address, something that you can have for the course of the next 3-4 years as a student at Ashoka. So this is the last round. And so if you have not submitted a form already, this is your chance. But if you have already submitted an application form in any other round, then if you submit a form now, it will be a duplicate form and it won't be considered because they are not eligible. So you can only submit one application form within an admission cycle. And your application form needs to be filled by yourself. So if it's plagiarized, now that's a good word for you to learn and know, because it's a huge part of Ashoka where you are going to be doing a lot of writing, and a lot of content needs to be created by you. You'll be reading and writing and doing research. And so plagiarism is not acceptable. And so it's not acceptable in the application form as well, which means you cannot copy from anybody else. You cannot copy from content that's online, or you cannot copy anybody else's content onto your application form. Okay, so that will not be accepted. Okay, there is on the website, on the Ashoka website, under the admission section, we have some content put up on what is not eligible or what is an incomplete application, and we hope you can go through that. Because if your application is not eligible, you will not be part of the shortlist for interviews. And if your application is incomplete, we will reach out on a case-to-case basis to require some more information. So please ensure that you look through that very carefully. It's a short section, but it'll give you all the details that you need to know. So the admissions page on the website, on the Ashoka website, is very important. And we hope that you can go through that in detail. Another guideline is that you should fill all sections, right? So don't just fill mandatory sections. There may be sections that are not mandatory, but they are relevant to you and they make sense. Please fill it up, which is why you need 2 to 3 weeks for your application form, because you don't want to fill your form in a rush. You don't want to fill only the bare minimum. You want to fill everything you can fill in detail, right? Check all your attachments, check all your documents, ensure that everything is double checked and everything that you attach is valid and is acceptable. At no point in the application form should you present anything that is not correct, right? Any information that is not correct. And and please don't write things in very, for lack of a better way of saying this, I would say, please don't write short forms or WhatsApp language or texting language in your application form or your essays. So this is an application and it's a formal application for university. So please do treat that application form with that sort of respect that it requires, right? And finally, I would say that when you're done with your application form, which you will be filling by yourself, that you should have someone look at it. Somebody whom you trust, someone who can look at it, give you feedback, and help you finalize it. Our outreach team is available as well. So if at any point you want to speak to anybody, you can write an email to the our outreach team, and I think they'll give you the email at the end. And somebody will be able to help you. So these are just broad general guidelines. Just a few very section-specific guidelines for you to know. And also give you a reason as to why we ask some of these things, right? So for example, you may wonder, why do you want so many details about my family or about my personal context, right? It's because, and you'll know a little bit more as I talk, is because we evaluate every candidate in their own context. We don't have a one-shoe-fits-all sort of attitude towards our evaluation, and it's holistic evaluation, right? And so we're looking at every candidate in their context. And so that's why we require that as much as possible, fill even non-mandatory sections apart from the mandatory sections. In your academic section, fill in the subjects or scores as found on your certificates. Let there be no discrepancy, right? For like class 10th, we ask for your first language, English, and then 4 subjects. Class 11th and 12th is English and 3 subjects. Of course, IB, Cambridge, you have different formats. So whatever you have studied, that's what we're looking for. I understand there's a concern about class 11th, where you may not have gotten a certificate from school. If you don't have a letter from school with your class 11th scores, if you do have one, we would request you to please attach that. If you don't have one on a document, you can write. You can type out that you don't have that and the school has not given it, and you can put your scores and attach that in that place. But and for your class 12, like I had mentioned already, that please don't be anxious since your board exams are cancelled. Please put your predicted scores either from school or your own, and we will use that to proceed. And as soon as the boards decide what they intend to do in terms of how they intend to give you your class 12 scores, we will then take that into account. If you're a gap year student, please don't hesitate to apply. I know that many gap year students worry sometimes that, will my application be considered? Will it have any merit? Will I be at, some sort of a disadvantage? I must say that that is not the case at all. So please do fill in your application and write very clearly what you've done in your gap year. And hopefully it's something very, you've had a good gap year, or you've studied elsewhere and you've spent a year doing something else, or doing something different and you want to change, whatever it might be in your case. Please do fill in the details and put in any attachment that's required, and then we'll take that forward. So one of the things that people often wonder about Ashoka is, why do we ask for non-academic engagements, right? So this is because the way the education system is set up at Ashoka, it's not rote learning at all. It's not like you have your academics, you study your subjects, you memorize them, and you give exams, and that's it. That's not how Ashoka works. Ashoka is a residential program. The undergraduate program is residential. It's completely holistic. You have classes, you pick what your curriculum and your day sort of looks like, you choose, you pick clubs, societies, and through the day, you engage with a variety of different things, right, and activities. So it's important for us to know how well you've engaged with non-academic activities so that we can sort of evaluate you and see, hey, will you be a good fit at Ashoka, where you would make the most of this sort of an education, where you will really engage deeply with things that you are passionate about, right? And so hopefully over the course of the last few years, you have been engaging with things apart from your academics as well, where you've, enjoyed something, maybe it's something that you've been doing for a very long time. Or maybe it's something you've picked up not so long ago, but you're really passionate about. Whatever it might be, we hope you can mention that, and provide some details on your depth of engagement and sort of maybe something that you've learned from that, just to make your application form more comprehensive for us. We also ask you for maybe genres or ranges of books that you've read and engaged with. Again, another aspect to see what you have done over and above school academics and school books, right? You must realize that the people who are reading your application forms are people that you may or may not ever meet. And so the application form is really your window and our window and into you, right? Our one sort of main way of having some idea about you. So which is why it's really important for you to be able to express yourself to the best of your ability and give us a picture of yourself that's as holistic as possible. Moving on, I'll talk more about the personal essays and I'll try and move a little fast here now. So the personal essays, the prompts are given very clearly. So we hope you can read them and engage with them and address them. I'll come to that in much detail. So I'll move quickly on to the letter of recommendation. I've talked about this already, who it should be from. I've also talked to you about your major course preferences, that they're indicative in nature, but we'd like to know what you're looking forward to maybe majoring in Ashoka or exploring. It could be things that you have not studied before as well, as long as you have a valid reason for wanting to sort of explore that, right? And finally, of course, your survey and support section. Hopefully, you will fill in everything as true and as required. Okay. Once you have submitted your application form, what you will do next is on July 4th, for round 4, you will write the Ashoka assessments. So our Ashoka assessments have two parts. One is the Ashoka aptitude assessment. Both parts are mandatory. And the second one is the on-the-spot essay. The Ashoka aptitude assessment has 40 questions. It's for 90 minutes, right? And it's developed by Cambridge Thinking Skills Assessment for us. So if you're wondering what sort of assessment it is, that's what it is. You can even look it up. We have some sample questions on the website. The aim of this assessment is to evaluate the thinking skills of the candidate, right? And so the questions you will find will require very minimal preparation because they are more on problem solving or critical thinking. They do include some numerical and spatial reasoning or include arguments and reasoning with everyday language, but you don't have to necessarily memorize anything and come for that exam, right? Or for that assessment. It's something that you will probably bring all the information that you have in your head over the years, bring it together. And at that time when you're writing the assessment, it's so logical that you should be able to, if you're focused and if you answer each question based on your prior knowledge, you should be able to do well. However, if you're worried and you want to prepare, like I said, it's based on the thinking skills assessment. We have some sample questions on the website, or you can also look online and find something on similar lines. The on-the-spot essay will give you 2 prompts, right? You have 30 minutes. There's no word limit. You read the prompt, you pick one, you read both the prompts, you pick one, and then you decide which one you want to write about, and then you engage with the prompt itself. So we're looking for, again, critical thinking, clarity of thought, creativity, if required, but mostly a sort of a logical response that's giving that allows you to argue your point. So that's what we're looking for. So hopefully you sort of understand this, because this is a very important part of your application form. Okay, moving on. The next stage is, once you have submitted your application form and you have written the assessments, each application form is read in detail by the Office of Admissions. It's evaluated in a holistic manner by the admissions committee, and based on which you call for an interview. The interview is mandatory, and you will meet with the panel. Again, there's no time frame. We usually go from anywhere between 20 to 40 minutes or 45 minutes. The aim is to get to understand you. That's your opportunity to be able to talk, right, and express yourself. It's a conversation, so please don't feel nervous. Be true to yourself. You know, if you need time to think before you answer something, take time, ask for time. If you don't know something, you can say you don't know. It's a conversation, right? And we really want to get to know you. It'll be based out of your application form. So there could be questions on academics, there could be questions on your interests, there could be some questions on things that you have mentioned in your essays, or something about your own personal self or your background. It could go anywhere, but it would be based on your application form and what you have mentioned. So hopefully that will be helpful for you if you do get shortlisted for the interview. Finally, I think I went through this, but very quickly, you can get a confirmed offer of admission without your class 12 scores. And so if you do get an offer of admission, all you need to do is then get a pass certificate from your board or your school. Conditional offers are where you will be required to meet your predicted scores, right? So that's a kind of offer we do get at times. Sometimes we would place students on a wait list, and if there's availability of seats towards the end of the admission cycle, we give them an opportunity and give them an offer of admission. And oftentimes what would happen is all the information that we have, including the interview, is not sufficient for us to make a final decision. And so then we wait for that one other parameter that we don't have, which would be your grade 12 final scores. And so your decision may be deferred. Once we receive that score, we reevaluate, and some of you may get offers of admissions from that, right? If you have everything, including your final grade 12 scores, and you're not making it, the admissions committee may also give you a denial of admission. If you received a firm offer, a confirmed offer, a separate financial aid application form is open, which you can fill in and which you can, that's an entire different process, which I'm not going to talk about, and maybe you've already heard about it, but they have a bunch of requirements that you need and documents, which you can look up on our website and prepare for that. Okay, so this is the entire sort of the admissions process and the application form. And very important part of all of this is that all of this only makes sense within your context, right? So you, in your personal context, are looked at through the application form. So holistic admissions for us is where we look at each applicant within their context, because no two of you are alike, and no two of your lives are alike, or your performance is alike. So we look at you within your context. And we also have a very strong focus on affirmative action, which is based on, social, personal, medical, geographical, educational, learning disabilities, could be whatever it might be that you have. If there is something that you have put on the form, we will look at it and we'll ensure that there is a strong affirmative action and while processing your application form. So finally, the question would be, what exactly are we looking for overall, right? I think very quickly, if I had to sum this up, I would say that we want to know that you are a candidate who is engaged and who wants to learn, right? That whatever you sort of take up and you engage with, that your engagement is deep, that you enjoy learning it, that you're exploring over and above just what is given to you, that you're really interested in growing yourself. That's something that we're looking to know. The other thing is we're looking for motivation. We want to know why you do what you do. It doesn't matter what you do, right? You could be baking, you could be reading, you could be playing a sport, you could be dancing, you could be painting, you could be studying, you could be stargazing, but whatever it is that you're doing, we want to know why you do what you do. And we also want to know if in case you're faced with obstacles and challenges, how do you overcome challenges? Because that's going to be really important for you as you get into university life. So this is sort of to summarize what exactly we're looking for within our entire process. If you now look at this slide and look back at the application form and think about every section of the application form, you may see why the form is designed the way it is. It's really for us to get to know you, to really get to know you in a way to the best of our ability, to the best of your ability, really, in the way you present yourself as much as we can. Okay, so I'm done with the first two parts, the admissions process and the application form. And what I'll do is, I have a little bit of time. So in the next maybe 10 to 12 minutes, I'll quickly run through our personal essays, right? There are 3 personal essays on the application form, and I'll show them to you. You may have already seen them, but before that, I just want you to think along with me, and I won't take too much time, and after that, we'll open it up for questions. Good thing to ask yourself, wherever you're applying, where you need to fill in application personal essays, right? Or a statement of purpose, as some places call it, is why do universities require you to submit personal essays? And what is the intent behind each of the essay prompts? So any university that puts out personal essays where they require you to read and think and write, they have a reason for that. There's something that they want to know. So a good way for you to look at questions would be like that. Like, what is the intent behind this particular prompt? Why does this university want to know this, right? So that's something for you to sort of think about. The second question you can think about is, how can your personal essays add to your overall application? So you've already got an application where you've put in so much information, right? We hope that your personal essays are not repeating what you have put in other parts of the application. So your personal essays have unique questions which need to be answered in a unique manner. And so you need to ensure that your personal essays add to your overall application and not repeat, right, what you have already put elsewhere. Thirdly, how will your personal essays help you stand out to some extent among thousands of applications received and read by any admissions office, right? We're reading so many applicants, right? We're reading so many applications. So what is it that you're going to tell us in your personal essays that's going to make us remember you and think about you? Okay. These are the 3 essays that we have on this year's application form. You may have seen it. You may have already started working on it. You might be wondering what to write. You might be thinking about it, right? And if you look at it, the first, and I won't read this, you can look at it in the form, but the first prompt that we're looking at, right, is really something a bit intellectual. We want to know how you think. If I had to summarize that, we want to know how you think, right? So if you take a minute and you look at that, you'll see that the question is all based on how you think. Reflect on a belief or opinion. What did you question? What initiated your questioning? Describe the process, the intellectual process you took to examine that belief or opinion, right? Explain what happened after that, after you reflected. What changes did you see? A very sort of intellectually engaging question. Essay 2 is really on your personal life. Tell us about something very important to you personally, which has shaped you. That's something that we want to know about you. Something that's very personal. And you can be as honest as you choose to be. As long as you're not making up anything, please feel free to be as honest. Your application forms are confidential. We don't share them with anybody. But as long as it helps us get a good view into you. And finally, the third essay is a bit futuristic. We want to try and understand what you think you can contribute to the world, to community in the future. Something that you think would be happening, which would impact the world in the next decade. When you look back at it, you think that we never saw this pandemic happening, or, none of us were really prepared. And so maybe this is an opportunity to sort of take stock of things and think about what are some things we might be facing as a planet or as a country in the future, and what is something that you want to add value to it, because you are the future. So how do you want to add value? So these are the 3 essays. So they are going to take you time to think about it. They're going to take you time to reflect and to write. And in order to do that, I'll come to that, but very quickly, a good essay will really address and engage with each prompt and the intention behind each prompt, right? A good essay will also support and substantiate whatever you write with some logical reasoning and facts, so that you're not just writing generic things or things that you just think about in your head or you feel, which don't have any sort of backup, right? So whatever you write, if you're making statements or if you're presenting an argument, it should be substantiated with some facts, some research, some logical reasoning. And finally, focus on reflection and critique, key learnings. Like ensure that your essays are able to tell us that you've actually sat down and thought about every part of the prompt and what you have engaged with. What I'm going to do very quickly is give you this slide just to get you started on how to think. A lot of you may be very reflective people. You may be people who generally like to reflect and like to think and like to wonder and ponder. But maybe there are some of us here who don't know where to start thinking about ourselves. And I know you have only 20 days or so to submit your application form. But if you want, you can take a picture of this slide. But this slide is really to help you reflect on yourself, right? Before you start writing your essays, maybe think about defining or challenging moments in your life that have left a big impression on you. Think back, introspect, retrospect, maybe talk to people around you, ask them their views about you, right? Think about people, books, shows, conversations that have influenced you, maybe positively, maybe negatively. That's an important thing as you reflect, because it would have changed the course of your life in some sense. Think about areas that you're passionate about, your motivations, what drives you, why do you wake up in the morning and do the things that you do? Maybe identify your strengths or characteristics about yourself that you appreciate. Oftentimes we think about our weaknesses, which is very important because we do need to identify that as well, like areas that you want to develop or change in yourself. But your strengths and things that you really value about yourself and give you confidence are equally important. Another thing that I like to ask students or young people is really like, how do you spend your free time? How do you spend your pocket money? A lot of who you are will be reflected in what you do in your free time and what you do with your money, right? It doesn't matter what the pocket money, it could be 100 rupees, it could be 2,000 rupees, right? It doesn't really matter. It's really what do you do with that? It'll give you an insight about yourself. Again, I must say that these are not things you need to share with anybody, really. If you want, you can share with people you trust. But these are just things for you to observe about yourself as you reflect on yourself. What are some attitudes or the way people behave around you that irritate you or make you mad or actually make you appreciate them, right? What are some things that you really challenge? What are things that you question or things that you really love? Of course, think about what you want to do in the future. What are your personal aspirations? What do you want to contribute? And especially, what sort of impact do you want to make around you? This is not a comprehensive list. It's just some things that I put together because I feel that it may help you get started on just reflecting yourself. And you'll see that things that come out of this might be helpful in you writing your essays as you reflect on yourself and put it into words. I think finally, just to remember while you write your personal essays, so I've got a list of do's and don'ts, and you can look at this, but please write your own draft. Just as you will fill in your own application form, please also write your own essay drafts. Don't get someone else to write it. It's okay to get feedback from someone you trust. You should do that at the end, but you should write your own draft. You can even write 10 drafts. You don't have to write one draft. This is really a very, very important exercise. So please take it seriously. Writing about yourself is not easy. Having someone else write about you is horrible. But you writing about yourself will be as genuine as it comes, right? So please do write your own drafts. Think and engage with all parts of the prompt. Don't just address half a prompt and not the latter part. A lot of times we see students do that. Engage with all prompts completely. Be honest and genuinely represent yourself. Write with clarity. Give reasons for why you're saying what you're saying. If you're not a creative person, you don't need to be creative. If you are creative and you express yourself in that manner, you can be, right? But these are still formal essays. So please keep that in mind. Then, of course, structure and link your ideas, your paragraphs, and your thoughts together. Like I had said, please do not plagiarize either the application form or the personal essays. Don't write something that's not true. So don't dramatize or fictionalize. Again, don't make sweeping statements that don't have anything to back them up. Don't make generalizations using words like always, never, because most likely those are not true. Sometimes we tend to overestimate ourselves in our essays and we try to brag about ourselves. But sometimes we also tend to underestimate ourselves and think that we're not good enough. I request that you be moderate, be balanced, don't overestimate and don't underestimate, because whatever you write shows up when we read. The other thing that you should not do is to not summarize your extracurriculars or your achievements in the essays. There is a place for your extracurriculars and your non-academic achievements or your academic achievements, right? The essay is not the place for that. You could use an extracurricular as to tell a story about yourself or to question something, but it's not a place to list down your achievements. And of course, please don't write informally or casually and stick to the word limit. Don't overshoot the word limit, but also don't write your essays in like 2 sentences or 3 sentences, right? There's enough word limit there for you to really sort of engage with yourself and write. So yeah, broadly, this is my, if I had to summarize the application form, the admissions process, and the personal essay. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I hope that, this part of the conversation was helpful. What we'll do now is we'll take some questions, which I'll have Janvi help moderate.
Hi, Moshe. Thank you so much for that. There are a bunch of questions which I've sort of collated into different buckets so that maybe we can try and address them at one point. I'm going to take a couple of them to give you some time to catch your breath. I've sort of divided the questions into different sections, and I'm going to try and do it in that way so it can help students, so we can just try and address things a little quickly. There are quite a few questions about the Ashoka aptitude test, so I think I'm just going to start from there. So the first one says, how does one prepare for the AAT? Are there any books, etc.? What topics are tested in the Ashoka aptitude test, and what weightage is given to the aptitude test and essay in comparison to other school academic scores? So I'm going to just try and take a step back and explain to you and just sort of dwell on what Moshe spoke about in terms of Ashoka's admissions process being entirely holistic. There is no specific weightage or comparison or even importance assigned to one part of your application over another. The reason that these multiple things are demanded of you and that you put it in your application form is because each of them are relevant for us to make a decision at each stage, whether it's at the stage where we're reading our application before we shortlist you, or whether we're interviewing you. And at that stage, we also do go back to your application form. So all of these different aspects, I would say, are relevant throughout your process. In terms of preparing for the AAT, there are 2 sample papers that are available on our website. You can take a look at those. There aren't any books. Also, I just want to sort of emphasize that the point of the AAT is not necessarily a test that one studies for. It really does just test sort of general aptitude and like logical thinking and the way that you think. There is no set syllabus for it. So I would recommend that you take a look at the questions in case you're thinking about applying to us and will therefore have to take this test. And there are a couple of questions about whether it's important for everyone. I just want to say yet again that it is mandatory for everybody to take it. Even if you have taken the SAT or the ACT and chosen to submit those scores, you will be required to take the AAT online. The dates for the assessments are actually mentioned on the website, so you can take a look and see which dates correspond now only for round 4, since that's the only one that's left. And there's a question about if there's a negative marking of any form or if it's what a competitive AAT score is. There is no negative marking. As for what a competitive AAT score is, again, I'd like to emphasize the fact that it doesn't really matter what a competitive AAT score is, since we are looking at your application holistically. There are multiple aspects to your application of which I'm pretty sure that different people would do well in different parts of it. That is really the point of designing an admissions process like this. Also, we do not release AET scores, unfortunately, so we will not be able to comment on that. I think that covers it for the aptitude test. If anything else comes back, I'll take it up at the end. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the co-curricular section and what we call the non-academic section, actually. I think I wouldn't want to limit it to just that. There are general questions about how long, engagement should be from, what kind of engagements you can include and things like that. I'm just going to try and give you a broad overview of it. From how long ago engagements would be, if there's something that you've been engaged with consistently for a very long time, we would of course recommend that you put it in. Please understand that the reason that it is called non-academic engagement, and then there are 5 options for you to do it, is for you to really prioritize which things are important to you and you think you would like for us to know about you. There is no particular kind of activity we're looking for. Any kind of engagement that you have partaken in outside of the classroom that you think is important for who you are as a person is something that I would say is worthwhile and something you should put into the application form. Of course, the point is for us to try to get to know you better as a person. So if you do end up putting in multiple sort of entries from things that you've done from very many years ago and not something that you are currently engaged with, it won't really give us an adequate picture of who you are in the moment. So I would recommend that you try to sort of ensure that you keep it relevant so we're able to understand what it is you're currently engaged with and interested in. There's a question about social media handles and what kind of content you can attach. Honestly, you'll see that in the form it's possible for you to attach any kind of supplementary information. Honestly, please feel free to use whatever it is that you might feel expresses what it is that you do the most well, so that we can take into account and understand your engagement with it. So please feel free, whether that's a blog, a social media handle, a page, like one of those online portfolios, whatever it is, please, or Google Drive, anything like that, please feel free to attach it. I would recommend attaching things directly and not necessarily through a Google file. It does make it tedious for readers. People do tend to do that, and I would recommend that you just sort of attach things directly. There is also a question about whether you could, whether students or candidates can put multiple things into one zip folder or a PDF and upload it. Please do not do that. I would say it takes away entirely from the point of giving you, space to enter 5 activities that we would like for you to prioritize. It's not really for us to look at all of them and decide which ones are most relevant for you. Please think about it when you're spending time on your application form in those 1 or 2 weeks, and decide what it is that you would really like for us to know, and please attach only relevant information. Yeah, so I think I'm just to continue with this line of thought, so we can sort of get over with this kind of questioning, is about the SAT and the ACT scores. It says, is SAT and ACT mandatory for everyone? No, it is not. The AAT is mandatory for everybody, and in case you have taken an SAT or an ACT, we of course encourage you to attach the scores. It's entirely up to you. Please understand that we of course take a look at sort of whatever you've performed best on, whether it is that you choose to disclose your SAT, ACT or not. You will still be required to take the AAT, which is so if you choose not to give us any of those scores, we will still have your AAT to work with, which is why it is not mandatory. Will not having SAT, ACT negatively impact your application? Absolutely not, since it is not mandatory. There is no preference for students who have taken the SAT. There seems to be a lot of questions about this, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but just for the sake of clarity, I would like to put that out there. No, Ashoka does not. There's a question that says, does Ashoka offer conditional offers on SAT scores? No, we do not. That is entirely based on your own predicted scores. Whether that's from your school or your self-predicted scores, that is the basis for a conditional offer. It has absolutely nothing to do with any standardized scores. Moshe, there are a few questions just, I think, that come very close to what it is that you actually spoke about. So I think I might direct some of those to you first. It's generally asking about what is Ashoka looking for in a student specifically. I mean, talking a little bit more about holistic admissions, which I think, we don't really need to necessarily go over that, but it also says, do you give merit-based admission? Is there a specific cutoff score? Sort of trying to understand, how a student might convert from an applicant to an admitted student.
So I think if I had to maybe reiterate some of the things that I said, but say it very quickly, I would say that your application form and the way that you fill your application form is very important. So don't take that lightly. Ensure that your application form is as thorough and as detailed as possible, because that really adds value. Of course, the content is important. Is as important as how you fill the form. But the fact is that the application form is very important. Your assessments are very important, right? So those are the two things that are totally in your control at this moment. So what you have done over the last, in school, or what you have done in the last few years may not be in your control right now. But what you have in your control right now is the application form and the assessments. We don't do purely merit-based. If you think merit is based on some cutoff, then no, we don't do that. But what we do is we do look at all parts of the application form. And so, it could be that your academics are probably not the best, but there are other parts of your application form that really stand out and that are really where you have invested your time and your life in. And maybe that is what will get you shortlisted for the interview, right? So it's not just saying, and maybe you're somebody who has extremely good academics, but you've not done anything else as well, and your application form is not filled in properly, or it doesn't contain any other information. Now that is also not going to work. So we keep saying holistic admissions. We're really trying to be as true to it as possible, which is why cutoffs is not a conversation we have at all, and we don't really do anything based on a cutoff. So there's no cutoff to publish, there's no cutoff to talk about, regardless of anything, right? School scores, standardized scores, there's no cutoff. We really are focusing all our attention on trying to do holistic admissions, where each candidate, based on what you put on your application form and how you perform in your assessments, based on that, you would either get shortlisted for the interview or not.
Thank you, Moshe. There's also a question that is specific in terms of the transfer program. So I think I would just direct that to you here. It says, I'm hoping to transfer from my current university. Is there anything in particular that I should keep in mind during the admissions process, or any particular advice you might have for a transfer student?
So I know this is not relevant for most people here, but the transfer application process is slightly different. It's not really this conversation. Maybe what we can do just to save time is, if you could maybe write a question to go to the website. There's a page that says undergraduate transfer admissions. If you could write, there's an email ID there. If you could write to that email ID, somebody will maybe contact you or reply and give you all your answers. I think that'll be helpful. It'll be more specific to the transfer application process, which is not what we're talking today, because this is for fresh applicants who are applying directly into the a lot of it is similar, right? Like the application form, many parts of the app. So I'm not saying it's completely different, but there are some very unique factors for the transfer admissions. And we can probably take that offline over another conversation elsewhere.
Okay, thank you, Moshe. There are a couple of questions about financial aid. I think I'll take them, and in case you want to add anything, please go ahead. So the first question says, who can apply for financial aid? When does the process start? How much aid can I expect? Okay, so I think just to maybe start by reiterating everything that Moshe said, admission to Ashoka is entirely merit-based and financial aid is entirely need-based. The two offices that deal with this and the two procedures are completely separate from each other. One does not have any kind of, influence on the other than the fact that you apply for financial aid once you've been admitted to Ashoka, that's all. So once, who can apply for financial aid? Everybody. So the way that it works is, once you do apply to us and go through the entire process, at the end of the round you've applied to us for, when you do hear back from us in terms of our final decision and notification, there is a window, if you have been admitted to Ashoka, for you to be able to apply for your financial aid. there is a form that the financial aid office rolls out where you're required to submit requisite information about a range of different things, which they will use to make an informed decision about how much financial aid you will receive. It's based on several factors, so I will not be able to answer a question such as how much financial aid can one expect, because it is completely need based and the circumstance of everybody is entirely different from each other. We do not give any merit based scholarships. There are a couple of questions about this, and we did mention that at the very beginning, but I just want to make it clear that that is not something that Ashoka provides. There is a question. There are also very many specific questions that we received about whether financial aid is available for XYZ category of people. Those questions, I mean, those have been specified. I won't read them out. I just want to say that everybody is open to apply for it, and you are eligible based on the information that you provide and based on your financial status entirely. So, in case you feel like you would require some kind of financial assistance to be able to attend Ashoka, the financial aid office, the point of them being there is to grant it to you so that there is no monetary reason for which you are not able to attend the university. Of course, at any stage, if you do get into Ashoka and have further questions about this, you could always reach out to the financial aid department or us directly. This, however, will not really be relevant up until the point that you do hear back from us. There are a couple of miscellaneous questions about some that talk about the YSP and things like that. So I'm just going to take those quickly as well. The first one says, does being a part of the YSP this year help me get into Ashoka? No, it doesn't. The YSP is is a program that's sort of designed for high school students to give you an idea of what it's like to study in a liberal arts university. Sure, specifically Ashoka, but just generally an idea of what liberal arts college education is like. We do ask in our application form something you might have noticed, whether you have attended the YSP, but that's not because we sort of give preferential treatment for it. It's just for us to have an understanding of whether you might be familiar with this style or pedagogy of teaching. So no, in short, that it really does not. It's just for us to sort of have slightly more information about you, nothing else. There's a question that says, "Can I reapply in the fourth round?" There is a policy that you can only submit one application to us in a year, in a cycle, in one admission cycle that includes all of the 4 rounds. So the admission cycle that's sort of open in November and that is going to close in August, you can only submit one application through the entire year. If you do submit a second one or a duplicate, we will not consider it. You are eligible, however, to apply in the next admission cycle that will open for 2021-22. Is there a difference in applying in the 4 different rounds, or is there an advantage to applying in a particular round? No, absolutely not. The reason that it has been created with 4 different rounds is honestly because the process is entirely student centric. It really is for you to find the time of the year that suits you best. We have students that apply to us from all over the world, from different educational boards, and I mean, just generally very different circumstances, and their timelines all tend to differ. So the point is, for honestly, for you to choose a time where you have enough time to work on your application, spend enough time thinking about what it is you want to study, what it is you would like to do, and to be able to put in the relevant time and effort for you to be able to find out. Also, there, I mean, we make it very clear in the beginning, there are different acceptance deadlines, for example, that are relevant for different rounds. So you should keep that in mind when you do reply. When you do apply, knowing that you will be required to say, if you do make it to Ashoka, confirm your seat by a particular date. So for students who maybe want to get this completely out of the way, before like your board exams and things like that, they end up applying much earlier. There are some students who want to sort of focus on their board exams, finish with everything, and then apply for university. So honestly, I would just say that as long as you spend enough time thinking about it and reflecting on why you're doing it, absolutely any round that you apply makes no difference. There's a question about a conversion sheet and what that is. Just a small technicalities for students who come from alternative education boards. When you are filling out our application form, you will notice that there's a drop down for the more commonly accepted educational boards. In case you do belong to an education board that does not pertain to one of those, we would require a conversion sheet from your school, which essentially sort of standardizes the scores for us to be able to use a lens to sort of look at what your score is likely to be like if you were to sort of auto fit it into another education or a standardized education board system that we do use. There's this interesting question. It says, I sent the application form in a hurry and I wasn't aware of the application deadline. Do I have an opportunity to make some changes to the application form? No, you do not. And I think this is why we would emphasize even more on what we said about really taking your time to sort of decide what it is you want to say, what it is that you want to convey, how you would like to present yourself to the admissions team. It's not to say that you have only one chance and that I mean you're always available to apply to us the next year. But if you really want for us to have the correct picture of who you are and the way that you want to present yourself, please do not be in a hurry to do so. There's ample amount of time. It's almost, it's almost pretty much any time of the year the admission cycle is open, I think, other than for 2 months. So I would urge you to please take time and keep in mind that you will not be able to edit anything once it has been submitted. Moshe, there are a couple of questions about the process and if it's likely to change given, the uncertainty and now boards being cancelled and things like that. If I could direct those to you, it says, what is the process going to be like for students whose final admission decision had been deferred and was supposed to be made on the basis of their class 12 board marks? And generally, is there going to be any change or anything that one should expect given the change and the notification that has recently been put out?
Okay. So the process is going to remain the same. We're going to follow just what we've been doing, right? I think for board exams that have been cancelled, as of now, we are waiting to hear what the boards decide, how they want to give out your final results. So as far as we are concerned, we will accept your final results as given to us by your board, right? Now, how they do that is something that is in discussion right now, which is why and we are not involved in that discussion, right? So we'll continue with our process, and if your decision has been deferred, we are actually waiting. That I'm assuming you're not from this upcoming round. Then, if you're from a previous round, then we are just waiting to hear what your board would say. Once we have some clarity on how they intend to give out your final marks for your class 12, we will process accordingly. So I think right now is just the waiting period. It can be a bit painful, but we just request that all those whose decisions are deferred or those who are on a wait list or who've gotten a conditional offer, that they would just wait and patiently till we have more clarification on the process that the educational boards are going to use.
Thank you, Moshe. There are a couple of questions about the essay section. Of course, you covered it. There are a couple of them. I'll try and take some of the answers. And of course, please weigh in whenever you think. The first question says, in the first essay, do I explicitly have to talk about changes in my opinion or belief, or can I use the show, don't tell method? I'm not entirely sure I understand what that means, but I will try to address the larger question about the first essay. So if you notice and you read it carefully, like Moshe did, there are actually 4 distinct parts in that question. There are 4 different things that we are asking students to do. I urge you to spend time and it's also 400 words. So a good way to spend your time and try to understand what it is that, a student, what we might be trying to understand about you is just try to make sure that you answer every part of every question, because there is a reason that it is being asked. Does it have to be explicit about a change or a belief? Ideally, it's asking about something that has challenged you and caused you to think differently. Whether that might not conventionally be an opinion or a belief, that's all right. It's just that we would really like to know about all these aspects of what has changed you. How you sort of came about it, what it did for you, why did it change, all of it. So we would not, it's not like there's a particular correct answer, but however, whatever it is you choose to write about, we would expect you to sort of treat it with the same amount of rigor that you would if you thought of a conventional opinion or a belief. Also about the on-the-spot essay, it asks whether it's written online. Yes, it is. It's a part of the assessments that we conduct, that and the AAA. In case you do sort of end up applying to Ashoka and you have to participate in this, you will sort of hear from us, and there is a particular date, again, which has been mentioned on the website, where you will be able to appear for both the essay and the aptitude test, which happen back to back. Is the personal essay the same as a statement of purpose?
Can I just step in here, Janvi? Just to tell you that we changed. We used to have a statement of purpose, but if you look universally, the statement of purpose is it's largely it's one statement. It's you basically saying that why you want to go to this university, what you want to study, and why you think you'll be a good fit for the university, and why that university would be a good fit for you. That's not what we're asking, right? We are not asking that question in particular. There was a time when we did, and you may have seen it maybe historically in some old application form or process somewhere. But what we so we're not asking for a statement of purpose. We have really changed our application form to incorporate personal essays, which are really personal to you, because our aim now is not to really ask you why you want to come to Ashoka, right? Our aim is to try and find out more about you and to understand you better, how you think, what has been in your life that has made you, has changed you or has challenged you. So in that sense, how do you think? How do you feel about things? What is your engagement with things? And what are you looking for in the future? If you look at all those questions, they're very personal, and no two essays are alike. You're not telling us about Ashoka. You're not telling us about the things that are on our own website. You're really just only telling us about yourself. And so, yes, if you ask me, they're very different. The personal statement has parts. A statement of purpose may have some parts of yourself, obviously, where you talk about yourself a little bit. But the larger statement is really to express your intent to apply to a particular university. It's about you and that university and what you want, why you think that university is a good fit for you. What we're asking for is completely different, actually.
Thank you, Moshe, for that. I'm just there's this last question about essays, and then we can just move on. I think I'll just try and take it. It says about the third essay, we will obviously consult the internet. Is that plagiarism? Is it also? And there's another question about plagiarism. I'll take it back to back. So, I would also encourage you generally to read a little bit about plagiarism, and also, of course, we can talk about it a little bit. Plagiarism is essentially lifting verbatim something that is somebody else's original work. Whether if you're inspired by something you've read, if you've done research of your own, that's absolutely fine. You can, of course, sort of allude to it if you like as well, since it does ask you about something you want to be a part of. You can always mention that, I read it at XYZ place. This is sort of an idea that I came across. But if you were to absolutely lift something from another source, that is what would qualify as plagiarism. And something that you will definitely be, it's a good thing to sort of become familiar with at Ashoka for sure, because this is something that is a big part of academic life at Ashoka, since it is a very writing and reading intensive curriculum. So yes, I would tell you that you should definitely ensure that you do mention where you sort of tend to pick up things from, and especially if you're trying to sort of communicate an idea that might have been inspired from elsewhere, make sure that you write it in an original way and sort of express your own thoughts, and don't necessarily borrow entirely from something else. Another good trick would be why you could always put your own essay through a plagiarism checker, and based on the amount of percentage it throws out at you, you'll know how much you need to edit or not. Is it counted as plagiarism if I've sent a similar essay to another university? Moshe, would you like to take that?
No. If it's your own essay, of course, you're more than welcome to use parts of that essay. But one thing we've noticed is when people send the same essay where they've sent elsewhere to us, sometimes it doesn't fit into our prompt and the questions that we're asking, right? And so in light of that, just to say that even if you are using content that you've written for some other university, please ensure that you're addressing the prompts on the Ashoka essays. Janvi, if you don't mind, there are a few quick questions that I would just take as we go along. I just want to address a few things, especially for those of you who have maybe someone has asked about learning disabilities, right? It does, if you have a sort of learning disability or any sort of physical health concern or anything, please note that it does not affect your application form at all, right? It in fact gives us a much better understanding of you. So please do put down anything that you feel, that you have been facing. If you have a medical document or an assessment that you have done for learning disability or for physical health, there is a place where you can attach a document. That is the proof of the diagnosis, right? And we would require that. We also want to say, for those of you who have a learning disability and you have been granted in the past maybe extra time, or your disability requires you to have extra time, whether you were granted that or not in the past, the document that you submit will really help us provide that for you from the stage of assessments. So please note that this is all in favor for the students and not against, and will not be held against students in any sense. And no, there are no negative consequences. Okay. Another question very quickly is about students who are not Indian citizens, but have finished and studied their 12th in India. No, the process is not different. The process is exactly the same. The process is also exactly the same for international students who are applying to us from other countries, who've never been in India, who are not Indian nationals, who are, from elsewhere. So there's no difference in process. The process is exactly the same. The fee structure is exactly the same. The financial aid process is exactly the same. So there's absolutely no difference in anything. The mark sheets, of course, the academic mark sheets and things will be different, but we have ways in which we assess them, where we look at them in the same light as we look at in some sense, there's an equivalence that we do to look at. Another question is there a reservation for SC/ST? This is a very interesting question, and I haven't seen this very often over the years, but I just want to say that we don't have a fixed reservation for SC/ST. We don't do quotas, but what we do really is, in our attempt to be true to holistic admissions, is that we really look at people from all backgrounds, all spaces, all disadvantages. And in fact, there's a question on the application form which says that if you have faced any disadvantage, please make a note of it. And it is over and above SC/ST. So from our side, while yes, we do look at students who come from the SC/ST background, we also look at students from all other backgrounds that might be disadvantages. And we do, like I said earlier in my talk, that there is a high focus on affirmative action. And that's something that we really believe in. So please don't think for any moment that you would be at a disadvantage, or you would have negative consequences, or you would be at the losing end for any of these things. And we really want to sort of reiterate that and say that please ensure that you put on all information as is, and not worry, because they will be looked at in a very meaningful and good light. Similarly, I think there's another question on Haryana domicile. So since Ashoka comes under the Haryana State Act, because we are based out of Haryana, we do ask if you have a domicile certificate. The Haryana domicile certificate has some benefits for financial aid that come with it. So if you are a Haryana domicile, and if you do get an offer of admission, then it'll be helpful for you, right? But we will need that certificate. If you're not able to get the certificate, but you are able to apply for it and they give you a receipt of the certificate, for the early stages, that would also work for us, because you need to be eligible to apply for that. And so that would work. But if you don't submit anything, and if you don't think that is, and you don't have any access to that, and you don't submit anything, or you don't even acknowledge that, that's totally up to you. We can't mandate it, but the benefit is only for you. And so if you are a Haryana domicile, maybe you would want to look into that. Couple of other questions that I'll answer, and then Janvi, you can see what else we need to answer. One is there any age criteria to apply? No, there's no age criteria to apply at Ashoka. You can be of any age to apply. So our students do range, there is a range of ages on campus. You must also understand that the program works in such a way that in your own classroom, maybe not in the first semester, but from the second semester onward, you would have a lot of other students who are maybe in their third year, your seniors, maybe someone is doing the Ashoka Scholars Program, that's the fourth year. They'll be sitting in the same class as you as students. You may even have someone who's a student in a class with you, alongside you, a peer, but who might be actually teaching assistant for you in some other class, right, Janvi? I think so. In that sense, it's something. It's not so dependent on like, oh no, all my classmates are going to be the same age. We're going to be exactly sort of alike. It's extremely diverse, and we also have a very strong focus on diversity, inclusion, like I've talked about, and so anyone is welcome to apply. The only thing is that if your application form and your assessments meet our criteria, you would be called for the interview round. And if not, it doesn't matter what age you are. The chances of not being shortlisted are also there. Finally, the last question is, what are the total seats available from my side here? So we don't. So every year, of course, we look at a number of, like a class size for a cohort, because we can accommodate certain number of students on campus. It's a residential program. So the cohort size, there's something in our mind. So it could be anywhere between, we like last year or the year before, we were looking at cohort sizes between, around 650, I guess I would say that. But the entire cohort across all courses in the undergraduate program. But however, it's not specific, or it's not restricted that we have. It's kind of like based on the quality of applications. Let me put it that way. I think there's a better way to say it. Is that if you're a suitable candidate for Ashoka, you will get an offer of admission. Right. And so I don't think the numbers per se are the defining factors as yet. Maybe a time in future it may happen, but not right now. So just put in your best, and that's more important. And hopefully you'll get an offer of admission. I think I may have covered a range of questions, Janvi. Are there any few other questions left we can take?
Actually, I think we've pretty much covered all the big questions. It's also 7:15, so I think we could actually say bye now.
Yeah, sounds good.
I just maybe give people a few minutes to hang around. I just wanted to sort of announce a couple of other sessions and stuff that are coming up. But thank you so much, Moshe. I'm pretty sure it was very, very helpful for students. So thank you for your time. Thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. We hope that the webinar was helpful in helping you answer a lot of the questions that you might have as a potential applicant. There are a couple of last few points. There's a link to the feedback form that has been provided in the chat. May I request you to please fill it out and take a minute out if you don't mind. It would be very helpful for us. There's also an open house that is scheduled for next Saturday, 12th June at 11:30 a.m. The registration link has also been provided. Please do join if we think it might be helpful for you, given some of the queries that have also come up today. Lastly, there's another question and answer session with the admissions team that is happening next Thursday on 17th of June. The registration link to join that is available as well. If you have any other questions that you were unable to address today, while it will be sort of a platform for you to have any questions that you have addressed, we do urge you to join. The final round of applications for the UG program are open, as you're aware, and the last date to submit your application for this round is the 23rd of June. There were a couple of questions that came in about that as well, so please do note that. You can start your application at apply.ashoka.edu.in. You can visit our website, which is www.ashoka.edu.in, for any complete details that you might want about the admissions process, the timeline, and any relevant questions you have. In case you do have any questions that you are unable to have answered or that you might think of at another time, please write to us at apply@ashoka.edu.in, or the number that has been provided. You could reach out to us there. Thank you so very much for your time. Take care and stay safe.